But all of which to say that, like, insofar as these like principles in these districts exist or whatever, that is not done to forward the interest of even like Black America or to forward the interest of like any kind of objective political process. It's like literally just done to help Democrats, which is why the Democrat controlled media is so upset that the Trump administration or maybe the Trump Supreme Court, so to speak, is going to be threatening that power.
From the New York Times, the Supreme Court appears poised to weaken the Voting Rights Act. In a dispute over the Louisiana voting map, the conservative majority signaled it might prohibit using race as a factor in creating election districts. Resulting redistricting could let states cement Republican control of Congress. They're describing DEI. So, they're describing DEI here. This is the current map. There's a lot of these blue districts that are artificial. They're designed to grab the areas that have a high density of Black voters, and it turns these states bluer. It turns these states' congressional representation bluer. And these are completely artificial districts. Look at Louisiana here. You see this snaking because they're trying to capture as many Black voters as possible. Because in the Voting Rights Act, it creates this requirement for race-based districts, which in other words is DEI. You're giving people something just on the basis of their race, which is fundamentally opposed to this idea of equality that we have. And we see here, this is the current map. This is what it would look like if we just got rid of DEI at the highest levels of our government. The Republicans would pick up 12 seats. So we're going to bring John Doyle in. He's going to break this down further, among other things. I'm sure he has some thoughts on the immigration situation. Let me get this fired up for you guys. Just bear with me here. Sometimes it takes a second. There we go. Starting virtual camera. Da-da-da. Hey, John, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Dude, what is up, Patriot? How's life?
It's been too long. It's criminal that they've done this to us. It's been way too long.
I know. It really feels like it's a top-down hit. Well, look, for people, I'm sure a lot of Timcast viewers obviously remember you from last time. They're fans of your work, many such cases. For those who don't, maybe you can give a quick intro, who you are, what you do.
My name is John Doyle. I talk about politics on the internet. I give speeches. I do a little bit of everything. I wear a lot of hats.
I love that. Well, so I was leading into your interview. I was discussing this piece from the New York Times where it looks like the Supreme Court is set to rule on the Voting Rights Act, which is what has allowed effectively DEI at the highest levels. It has created these artificial districts, specifically in the American South, that create Democrat districts out of thin air because they're trying to basically create Black voting districts that
Sure.
give them congressional representation. I'm sure you have some thoughts on this. What is your take?
Well, I suppose I could find some. I think that the weaponization of like the Black vote in America is something that is obviously been a tool of Democrats. And I don't even mean that in like in a D'Souzian sense. I mean that to say that like Black people are just always going to vote for whoever the DNC chooses to be like the candidate for the Democrat Party or what have you. You saw a recent example of this actually in New York when Eric Adams drops out of the mayoral race, and instead of like abstaining from voting or something, like Black votes or Black support totally shifted towards like this Mamdani guy, like the most like radical left-wing politician that would maybe even make like Barack Obama blush in some sense. But all of which to say that like insofar as these like principles in these districts exist or whatever, that is not done to forward the interest of even like Black America or to forward the interest of like any kind of objective political process. It's like literally just done to help Democrats, which is why the Democrat controlled media is so upset that the Trump administration or maybe the Trump Supreme Court, so to speak, is going to be threatening that power.
Yeah, well, and it kind of ties in. So earlier in the show, I was discussing Trump overhauling the refugee system. And obviously the New York Times was pulling their hair out over it because he's basically prioritizing people that would assimilate into the country much easier, specifically English speakers, sort of dissident Europeans, Europeans of dissident political views, specifically on the right, like Afrikaners, white South Africans. So you're seeing this reorientation of our immigration system in a way that stops like punishing people purely for being white. And then you saw this article come out at the same time as, the SCOTUS obviously wants to take up this Voting Rights Act. What does that say about the environment, and specifically the Trump environment, for white Americans? Because it really does feel like there was, the government was targeting them for a very long time.
Yeah, I mean, we're just allowed to speak honestly about these things in a way that we never have been. The lie with immigration that's always been sold to us is like, well, yeah, we can have immigration, but of course they have to assimilate, they should speak English, whatever. But when you grant and concede that like immigration is something that is good for society, we should have it. Well, the people who tend to believe that don't believe that because they just like love immigration or whatever. They believe that because they actually hate Native Americans. They
Yeah,
hate normal Americans. And so when you give them the keys to that and say, hey, have your immigration, but make sure they assimilate, make sure they speak, they're like, okay, whatever. And then, of course, that's never enforced. And, so they come into the country, they don't have to speak English. They live here for many decades in some cases and never learn more than conversational English at best. And that makes the quality of life for Americans lesser than what it should be, without even getting into how they're getting like government loans. I just saw a graph on Twitter for the FHA loans that these people are
yep,
getting, for the welfare payments that these people are getting. So, yeah, the entire system has been designed basically to wage war against normal Americans. And when you're seeing the Trump administration take steps to have an immigration system or a refugee system or whatever, that's treating the issue more honestly, saying like, yeah, there probably should be cases where America can open up its borders to people who are legitimately being persecuted throughout the world. Not just they're incapable of creating a civilization, and so they should come over here and
sure.
suck on the teat of the American taxpayer. They're
Hmm.
actually being persecuted from the top down by their government because they are saying naughty things on Twitter, or the government is run by anti-white communists, much to the, I guess a similar vein that we're seeing in this country. Like, yeah, you should have a system where those people can come into the country who do then want to contribute to the economy, learn the language, vote for patriots. Like, these are people who are far more like us than, frankly, people coming from parts of the third world who maybe say that they love America, or really love like freedom and the flag or something like that, but have no deeper concept of what sort of our civilization is about.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I kind of want to tie the two together and maybe drill down a little bit because, you're seeing the Democrats, obviously, in both cases, this obviously benefits them. There's no question. I mean, the race based districting just gives them votes out of thin air in the House. But then even with the immigration system, Elon Musk has pointed out that, the Democrats have huge incentive to keep the floodgates open because it basically just battery farms voters for them, like all across the
Sure.
country. And but I want to drill down on that even further because that is true. We're looking at a numbers problem. But what does it say that in both instances, the Democrats, this puts them in opposition to white Americans?
Well, I think that they just don't really like white Americans. I think that they understand that the people with the deepest incentive to conserve the country just so happen to be, as a matter of like demography, white Americans. And you can have like, black conservatives and Hispanic conservatives, or what have you, but simply just a numbers game. I think something like 85 or 86% of all votes cast for Republicans in the last like 3 or 4 elections, including like midterm elections, have just come from white Americans. And so obviously, if you're trying to think of the simplest enemy that you can sort of advertise to your political coalition, it's going to just be like, hey, normal white people, which also works well because, as it would turn out, a lot of these people, be them, immigrants or sexual deviants, various racial, religious minorities, turns out the only thing that can actually unite that coalition of such diverse interests, and in many cases competing interests, is simply just like, okay, we can set that aside if all we focus on is that we really have this bone to pick with white people for whatever reason. So
Mm-hmm.
that's how they've sustained themselves for 60 years at this point. They haven't actually won a majority of the white vote since 1964. So every group in America seems to be voting along like racial lines. They don't actually really swing.
Yeah.
White people have increasingly only voted for Republicans. You're never going to win a majority of the black vote. You're never going to win a majority of the South Asian vote, to the extent that that exists now. Hispanics recently have finally made inroads, I guess, in a way that's advantageous to Republicans. And so I'm not discounting that. I'm simply saying everyone else seems to understand kind of the game that's being played here. And I think that patriots are finally waking up to it and kind of playing by the same rules, or maybe just throwing the rules outright.
Yeah. Well, I mean, for one, I'm looking forward to the abolition of or maybe the gutting of the Congressional Black Caucus, which are the sort of composed of some of the most annoying figures in the House of Representatives, and they all hail from these artificial race-based districts from the South. So I think that's a cause for celebration. I don't know what these guys are doing. I don't even know if they should be employable, let alone sitting congressmen and congresswomen.
Yeah, they can take a position at the United States
Yeah,
Postal Service
we
or
can just
something,
shift
Postal
them
Service.
maybe, and we're clearing
Yeah.
some room with these federal layoffs. I don't know, maybe we have some space to fill. But I was looking earlier. We pulled up the demographic makeup of New York City over time, We saw in 1940 it was 92% white. Flash forward to 2024, it's like 32, 33% white. And then,
Yeah.
and if you look at like a voting map of New York City, even with the last election, like, yes, it is true. Trump made inroads with Hispanic voters, East Asian voters, like Flushing, Queens. He had a decent turnout there. But broadly speaking, the districts in, or the parts of New York City that vote Republican are the predominantly white parts out of the outer boroughs. And there's no question about
Yep.
that. And so, like, for the Republicans, and they're scratching their heads saying, well, how can someone like Mamdani get in? My response is just like, because you allowed that voter base that would be there for a sensible candidate to basically get exterminated. Those people all live in Florida. Those descendants of those people in
Yep.
1940 live in Florida now. They live in North Carolina.
Yeah, yeah, you just have to offer free stuff and they'll vote for you. It's really that simple. I mean, anyone living in New York will tell you like the economy is sort of fake. I mean, I guess you could say that to an extent nationally as well. But when you're walking through New York City and you're like bumping shoulders with all these people are not like on their way to work. They're
Right.
not like on their way to some job. These people are like collecting government benefits and they're basically just there because it is a hub of resources, which is
John
why,
Rocker spoke about
there's
this.
that's so true. There's always this like argument about like why is it that the cities are blue but the states are red. And I remember like guys like Ben Shapiro would give these like intellectualized answers where it's like, well, if you're in the city, there's more of a focus on the collective, whereas if
Yeah.
you're out in the sticks, it's like the individual. And it's like, dude, like okay, it's probably more that these kinds of people who are attracted to the Democrat Party could not exist out in the sticks, not because they're not individualists or whatever, but because there's no like literal like hub of resources that is willing to distribute free stuff to them in a way that there is in a city. So they flock to cities because there's stuff all around that is going to be given to them for free. You can call that collectivism if you want, but the bottom line is that anywhere where you have these like hubs of resource distribution that are going to be offered to these people for free at the expense of the American taxpayer, then yeah, that's where these people are going to go and they're going to vote Democrat and they're going to concentrate there. And so it's less about like, attacking the urbanites than it is just like understanding kind of those dynamics at play, because I don't think that we should retreat from cities.
Yeah.
I think that American cities are some of the best in the world, maybe even the best in the world. We should be proud of that. And that they have become these like sort of, oh, we don't really want to go there. That is actually a point of shame. We should not be happy about that. We should take our cities back. And yeah, having somebody who has like the Star Wars last name be elected of the mayor of one of America's greatest cities 20 years after 9/11, I think is going to be a huge disgrace. I hope that our Jewish patriots in New York can stop that from happening, because I think that they're the only group that is
Yeah.
still majority for Andrew Cuomo. Every other group in New York, in terms of the electorate, is by majority for this Mamdani guy, except for the Jews who are still like 60% for Cuomo. So hey,
Yeah.
let's see if we can make something happen there.
Well, I mean, it's a side note. Is the projections in Brooklyn is that it'll be as red as Alabama in the next 50 years because of the Hasidic birth rate, and they vote like
Yeah,
dictatorial numbers for the Republican Party. That's neither
let's
here nor
go.
there. But well, to your point about sort of the free stuff driving a lot of this, I was reading a report from the CIS, the Center for Immigration Studies, just before you hopped on, and they pointed out, I think it was 52% of the foreign-born, so immigrants, illegal immigrants, etc., are on welfare to some degree, some sort of government
Hmm.
assistance, versus 39% of Native Americans, of U.S. citizens. And so I mean, this isn't just speculation. This is hard data. I mean, this
Yeah.
completely eviscerates the immigration is our strength argument, does it not?
No, it absolutely does. And that's too why the whole like trying to frame it in very safe language of the individual versus the collective is like wrong. Because when the immigrant is going to these cities and signing up without a second's hesitation to get all this free stuff paid for by Americans, the idea behind collectivism is that we're focused on the collective, which implies a sense of sacrifice. Those people are doing that actually with extremely selfish intentions, with no thought of how they're going to pay that back. So
Hmm.
it's actually not collectivist at all. It's extremely individualist in that sense. Whereas if you go out into the sticks, red town where it's maybe more individualist in the sense that they don't want you like just loitering on their property, those are still the people who would set time aside to stop and make sure that you're doing all right if you're pulled over on the side of the road. Those are like communities where you can have like I don't know, you leave out your fresh picked fruit on the side of the road and people will deposit money and take. So, in that sense, those are much more collectivist communities in the sense that they're higher trust. They can depend upon each other, they trust each other more. So, I really hate that kind of language, which keeps us on the Democrat plantation of not acknowledging that these people are alien to our society. They're literally foreigners. And yeah, when they're coming here, it's not because they want to, I don't know, participate in the American experiment or whatever. Like the American dream to them is just coming here and getting free stuff. They have no idea of how they're going to earn that free stuff, of how they're going to pay that free stuff back. It's
Hmm.
just like in their mind, wealth is this sort of like magic that rewards some people and others it doesn't. And so, insofar as they can like say the correct combination of words and like cast a spell to get some of that wealth, like that's good for them. And so they're happy to do it. And
Zoran
if you
Mamdani. Like, is it-
Dude, literally, like the Patriot thinks that these people are like much more intelligent in their like thought processes than they actually are. Like, if you ask them, like, wait, but why should you be entitled to free stuff? They'll like look at you like you're crazy. Like, what do you mean? I just get free
yeah.
stuff. I think there were literally interviews actually, somewhat pertinent to the Mamdani like candidacy, where they were doing like man on the street stuff, asking like his supporters, like, well, why should you get like free stuff paid for by the taxpayers? They're like, what do you mean? Like,
Yeah.
why shouldn't I? What are you talking about?
Yeah, well, I think this is where the disconnect is maybe coming from for people who are otherwise conservative, but kind of have this gratuitous sort of view of immigrants where they're saying, well, they're here to work hard, etc. And I mean, they do exist. I was saying earlier, I mean, I know some personally that obviously are here, they're hard workers, etc. But they are in a overwhelming minority, I would say. And I think this
Yeah.
disconnect is occurring because it's a very American and broadly Western, but specifically American idea of the pulling up by the bootstraps, right? Like this idea that we're all sort of temporarily embarrassed millionaires. I love that line, and it's true. But Americans like don't really like handouts. Just
Yeah.
instinctually, we've never been that way. So I think that's where the disconnect is coming because I think people have that view, and they have this way that they carry themselves. So they attribute that to everyone, but that is not really the mindset of people that are arriving, especially over the last 50 to 60 years.
No, not at all. I actually have a good friend of mine who probably wouldn't mind me telling this story. We know this person, but I won't name drop him or anything, but his house burned down like 2 or 3 Thanksgivings ago,
Oh
like
my
literally
gosh.
just burned down. And they were offered all of this support from friends and neighbors, like, hey, let us like help you, let us give you money. And they refused all of it, like literally
Hmm.
all of it, because it was understood that it is not good to like take handouts from people. And I understand that, like, if you're in a really dire strait, there's no shame in like accepting help. However, the other side of that is there is a nobility in denying it, even when it would be acceptable. Like, dude,
Sure.
obviously, like your house burned down, like you can accept some help and it's not going to make you like, a bad person or whatever. But there is a nobility in refusing that and, getting your own and pulling yourself up by your bootstraps, which I know is something that like boomers wave in the faces of us because they had a much easier time than we have it now. So I'm not discounting that, but I completely agree with what you're saying that like there's a certain mentality that is very unique to the American spirit, even maybe more so than what is possessed in Europe in a lot of
Yeah.
cases, where we believe in the frontier and we believe in that kind of like work ethic, and we believe in the sort of like, this is why I love the Oscar Mayer Wienermobile, for example. This is going to be like totally
Let's go.
random, but that is like pure Americana because it's excess, it's capitalism,
Yeah.
it's securing your fortune, and it's stupid. But it's like the same, the guy that made like millions of dollars off like the pet rock. Like
Yeah.
there's a uniquely American kind of just like, yeah, secure your fortune, patriot,
Hmm.
that is sort of characterized in all of those instances. And when people are coming to this country, they might work hard because they're working on a construction site, or they're, I don't know, the day laborer at, Lowe's or Home Depot. But it's just a different thing that is happening from the people who come to this country with nothing and don't just go work for someone else, but have an idea and secure their fortune with that. And you're just not seeing that with these immigrant groups so much. And yeah, you'll have your like your Steve Jobs or whatever. But again, we can't concede that those people even exist because we are not in charge of the enforcement for how immigration works. If we say, okay, yeah, you can have immigrants because they're working hard, right? Then the people who want immigration because they want to destroy the country and use that as a political tool to do so, they'll say, oh, yeah, sure, yeah, they'll work hard. And then they go and they literally facilitate the trafficking of these people in through the southern border by the millions. They're getting money from the Russians, from the Chinese, from everybody to do this. So it's like we said at the beginning, like, yes, we acknowledge that these people do exist. We love them. That's great. However, it is in the best interest of Americans to just relax all of that right now and actually prioritize our citizens and our people over, the well-being of the rest of the world.
Totally. Well, yeah, and I guess to kind of tie it back to the first story, that's why I find the New York Times reporting on the Voting Rights Act so offensive, because they try to posture it like it's this uniquely partisan attack on like some historic pillar of American democracy or something. But it's the Voting Rights Act is a very recent, in the grand scheme of things, recent thing. And this sort of discrimination against whites and this uplifting of black Americans, like it's at the expense of white Americans, because all those people in Alabama and Mississippi and Louisiana that would otherwise be represented are now losing their voice in Washington because of a top-down, imposition on them. They're saying, no, you must have this race-based district. And
Yep.
I find it just personally offensive just at a face level, because it's DEI fundamentally.
Yep, it is unconstitutional, and I won't have it. I will not have it in
Yeah.
our country.
Yeah, so this is what I'm going to get back to, is like with the Trump administration, it's just so refreshing to see this reorientation away from punishing white Americans for being white. It's just very refreshing. We're seeing it. We're seeing it with the H-1Bs. We're seeing it with immigration broadly, with the refugee system overhaul, and then with the congressional black districts. But there's still a lot of people that are very critical of the Trump administration, that for a variety of reasons. I mean, I'm seeing the football getting moved down the field, and I know you're seeing that as well.
I am seeing that as well. I don't know what to say to those people. It's just like, because at a certain point, they are perceiving the situation to be that like Donald Trump has on the Resolute desk a fix everything button, and
Mm-hmm.
he's simply refusing to press it because he secretly like hates us and wants us all to kill ourselves. And it's just like not true. I mean, you're talking about the United States government, like the
Yeah.
Leviathan, and we are now involved in that, trying to just steer the ship in the right direction. And honestly, like, I'm probably the biggest Trump shill working today, but even I have been surprised by how much progress this administration has made in
Mm-hmm.
less than a year. I mean, we have been racking up just so many like little victories and so many big victories, which I mean, by like 3 months in, we'd already eclipsed the first Trump administration, which I even then thought did, a pretty good job, all things considered. So we're just running so many laps around the libs. I can understand why you'd want to be critical, and I have absolutely no problem with people being critical in good faith. But
Sure.
that's not what people like to do. Instead of saying, like, hey, this is what they're talking about, let's maybe do this because this is better, but we all are on the same team. Instead of doing that, they're actually insulting the president's integrity, insulting his competence, accusing him of being stupid, corrupt, bought, whatever. And they're doing that because they are more interested in that narrative. It's more fun for them to believe that there's this like romantic Hollywood thing going on where there are these
Yeah.
characters and betrayals and drama. And in that sense, they're just like the people working in politics that are doing their, their Veep or their West Wing fantasy. Like they just like the sort of like theatrics of all of it, which is fine. But I would urge those people to take up maybe another hobby, sports betting. Maybe, you can still probably get into a fantasy league.
It's true. Yeah.
That'd probably be a little bit more their speed than like, this kind of thing. Cause clearly they're just confused. They're walking into walls all the time. Everything they predict ends up being wrong. Every analysis they give about how the world works ends up being wrong. And, a person with some sort of like self-respect would maybe just, yeah, pick up another hobby. And so I would affectionately nudge them to consider that because this is clearly not working.
Yeah, and I think there are people that already had an axe to grind with Trump anyway, for a variety of reasons. I mean, because there's guys, there's like, Tucker Carlson, or even guys like, like Corey Mills, when they put out, pieces or statements, and, it does feel like they're on the same team. They're just kind of
Yeah.
trying to maybe signal like, hey, this could be a problem. Let's take a look at this. And that's very, and I like listening to those guys. I think they provide a lot of good analysis and whatnot. But yeah, we're addressing like a specific vein. Well, it's not really specific. It's actually a large chunk of the right and left that are just dooming.
Mm-hmm.
And I always respond. I'm like, look, I went through this demographic makeup of New York City over time earlier. Donald Trump is from Jamaica Estates, Queens, which is a place I know very well. I went to school around the corner. I could walk to his childhood home on Waverly. Like, I know the area very well, and the makeup of that neighborhood is completely foreign now. It's majority immigrant, and even those second generation, even people that aren't immigrants are second generation immigrants. So it's been a complete demographic overhaul. You're telling me Donald Trump, a guy that grew up there when it was like primarily like German and Irish, doesn't know like what's going on? That just seems ludicrous to me.
Yeah, I mean, he obviously knows what's going on, but again, people don't want to exercise a little bit of humility and think, well, what would I do were I in his position? And if you just ask yourself that question and then plug that into the statements he makes and the decisions he makes, everything like clears up in a very positive way. But if you sit back and just assume, well, if I were in his position, I actually would just be able to wave a magic wand and fix everything right now, then it allows you to sort of entertain maybe your less desirable predispositions towards cynicism, assuming there's like some just conspiracy and he's like paid off or bought off or something. And that's against the rules, in my opinion. Like, you can criticize anybody all you want, but the second you start entertaining like this like attack on integrity for Trump specifically, that really just hits a nerve with me, because it is objectively true that he's been through hell in the last decade. He got shot in the head.
Yeah.
It is objectively true that at any point he could have taken an off ramp, probably before 2022, and he would have been allowed sort of a peaceful retirement. They probably would have let him keep some of his media legacy. They would have maybe said like, that was a bad chapter, but we love the Donald. That easily could have been like a deal that could have been made were he to just drop out of this and allow for Republican politics to heal to its like Mitt Romney state. But he never did that, and he never gave up. So again, you can criticize him all you want, but the second you start taking that in a direction where it's like, well, actually, maybe he's just a sellout. Maybe he doesn't have integrity. Maybe he sold us out. Like that's against the rules. Like, sorry, you can't do that if you want to have a seat at the table, in my opinion. Like,
Totally.
we're supposed to maintain a certain level of good faith. That is what we do. And you can even beat the crap out of each other and still be doing that in good faith. Like, I understand that you want this and I want this, but I don't like the way you want it, so I'm going to like break your nose. That is even okay. But the second you start entertaining this, like, frankly, third world, this like conspiracy theorizing where you're like, Donald Trump has been bought and he sold us out, it's like, you're doing that because you want the engagement from the lowest common denominator. It's not helpful. It's actually nefarious and subversive. And yeah, we just have no patience for that as we're trying to, in a very short window of time with very high stakes, right this ship in a way that can prevent us from being like completely obliterated if a Democrat gets back into power.
Totally. I mean, because like even beyond all the stuff that we've seen, like the shooting, the political violence, et cetera, just at a base level, the fact that the Voting Rights Act even exists and the fact that it's even created these districts just shows the amount of slop that he has to clear out. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous.
Yep.
I mean, we saw recently where he's trying to lay off, or not lay, yeah, he's trying to lay off a lot of these federal workers, and a federal judge comes in and puts a 2-week stay on it, a 2-week pause rather.
Yep.
And you see that, and I read the reasoning this judge gave, what she gave. She was just like, I don't like it. That was literally the reasoning she gave. She didn't appeal to anything. She just wanted an excuse to basically buy the swamp 2 weeks to try and maybe outweigh the government shutdown and close that window. So like the amount of just entrenched power he's up against, it's like, I mean, guys, let's take a step back here and give the guy a little grace, a little time to cook. So, but yeah, with that, we're running a little low on time. We're coming to the end of the clock here. So, I don't know, John, do you want to give anyone that's watching a shout out, figure out where they can find you if they want some more?
Yeah, I think someone just broke into my house. Yeah, you can find, they're shutting it down.
It's the Panicans. They're getting in.
YouTube.com/John Doyle. You can find me on Twitter at Comrade Doyle. And yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, well, good luck mopping up that panic and break-in. I don't know. They're trying to come at you, man. I don't know what the situation is, but
dude, they're trying to nerf the Vril from the top down. Just another day ending in Y.
So true. All right, Patriot, man. Have a good one.
All right, man. See you.
All right. Well, that was John Doyle, obviously friend of the Tate cast. He's a great guy, great Patriot. We hadn't had him on in a while, but we had him back, and I think he did a great job as always. So with that, we're gonna close the showdown. I think we're gonna raid Devori Darkins, I believe. I think that's the protocol here. I'm going to grab that and send you guys over that way. Some great content over there. So let's see, let's get this going. Beyond that, we will be back tonight for Timcast IRL at 8 p.m. Let's see, confirming the raid. Tonight for Timcast IRL at 8 p.m. I've been your host, Tate Brown. You can follow me everywhere. Follow me on Twitter specifically, or X rather, at Real Tate Brown. Thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you guys later.